President Trump recently announced tariffs on aluminum and steel coming from other countries. And it seems like everyone is in an uproar about it, those on the left and those on the right. But these tariffs are a good thing. Now, those on the right like to talk about free trade and a free market, and I agree, I'm generally in favour of both of those. But we don't currently have a free market. I mean, on the right, it's established that when you have government favouring one sector over another, that's a bad thing, that it's not a free market, and that problems will occur. The thing is, we've constantly had government doing that. But it's just not been our government, it's been other government, it's been governments like China. So what we need is our government to be able to perform this balancing act so that America can actually compete. Now, those on the left like to talk about how they like to paint America as some kind of parasitic country, like we can't feed our own or take care of our own without other countries jumping in and providing things that we need, and that's just not true. It's just patently dishonest. The US is agriculturally independent. It is practically energy independent. We don't actually need these other countries. Okay? Granted, a lot of the commodities that we get, like TVs, are made in China. I'll give them that, yes. We don't need TVs to survive and thrive. What we do need is steel. What we do need is a military that is powerful. We need weapons and bullets and trucks. There's lots that we need from metal and steel. Now, right now, there are tariffs, just not ours. See, China and these other countries, they have tariffs. See, the whole thing is being painted as if we're the only country that does that. When in truth, we're really the only country that hasn't been doing that. Because here in the United States, we believe in capitalism and in a free market. Countries like China don't. In fact, if I were a business and I didn't really care about America, I had no sense of duty or American pride, I could go and start manufacturing over in China. And I could create goods and sell them at cost, meaning at the same cost that it takes to manufacture, and still make a profit. How? Because the Chinese government subsidizes goods that are produced and which are exported. That's in violation of our trade agreements. We don't do that. But they can. There is a huge incentive for companies to relocate to China. I mean, how could an American company compete with that? They can't sell goods at cost. Because then they don't make a profit. How can a company exist? American industry in the area of steel is in a bad place right now. And the people up in Michigan and Pennsylvania, they'll tell you about it. And in a very real sense, they are the reason that Trump won. And he knows that. You see, this is what gets me. The people on the left, when they really freak out, is when President Trump does what he said he would do during the election cycle. You see, first, they were kind of banking on this idea that he would never win. You know, they were patting themselves on the back, 99% chance Hillary Clinton was going to win, which really all of them thought that meant 100% chance. And then he won, and then they decided, well, he'll be like every other politician. He won't actually do any of the things that he said he would do. And yet, here we are, and, you know, he has cancelled DACA, and he is talking about a wall, and he did declare Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. You know, it's just one promise after another, and now he's looking at trade. And that's when they panic, when a president could really do what he promised that he would do. And if he wants to win at a future election, he has to represent those places. Those places where people lost their jobs because companies were just moving overseas because they had this massive incentive to move. And part of the reason that they moved was because they couldn't compete against other companies who already had moved. I mean, there's more than that. There are unions too, but at least part of the reason is they can't compete in a market that isn't free. And don't forget, China is not a free country. You have what amounts to slave trade. I mean, and it's the same with a lot of these countries. I mean, not all countries are equal. I hate this horrible premise that, like, us and China are the same. No, because they don't treat their people the same. They do have people who are essentially slaves. They do have, children who are working essentially as slaves. And it's the same way with India, where there are literal slaves over there. When we think that slavery ended just because we ended it here in the West, no. Countries like India still have slaves. Pakistan is full of slaves. Africa is full of slaves. These countries are not equal to ours, and they don't contribute the same amount. I mean, we have to kind of grasp this, that they have different values based upon what they give back. Now, the US is in a place where we're in a bargaining position. We have a lot of power. Forget what the left says, because it's just not true. The US has the world's biggest market. You might not believe that, because when you look at a country like China and you think, well, they've got like over 1 billion people, like 1.3 billion people. Well, yeah, they do, but they don't spend as much. They don't. The United States spends more than China. It spends more than the entire European Union. And we have an incredible capacity to produce. We're not producing as much as we used to in certain sectors, like steel. But that can be brought back. And this is actually part of making America great again. It is, bringing back a manufacturing base. And it's possible to make alliances with, some of the good places, some of the places that haven't threatened us. Sorry, but we don't need maple syrup from Canada, or what does Australia provide? Like kangaroo meat, whatever. But there are countries that we can make, trade deals with, where we can both have, say, no tariffs. Countries like the UK, which recently left the European Union, which hasn't, threatened us with a trade war. Countries like Italy, which just recently voted in favour of a new government. Italy that is now leaving the European Union because of that new government that they voted for. We can make alliances with these independent, sovereign nations. We can respect the fact that they are sovereign nations, that they have their own interests in mind, and we can work together. We can form alliances that take care of our interests while they take care of their interests. I mean, this is not really that complicated. It's just that people on the left are trying to complicate it and undermine where America stands in the world. And people on the right are just kind of hooked on this whole free market idea, which doesn't make sense when we don't have a free market on a global scale. Well, I mean, Reagan recognized that China is not a place that we'd want to do business with. It took Bill Clinton to come in, and someone as corrupt as Bill Clinton to say, yeah, let's do business with China. Now, I've heard people say that Donald Trump plays 4D chess, right? We've kind of all heard this. And some people snicker at it, and I've snickered at it a couple of times. But now, as a result of this recent move with the tariffs, North Korea wants to meet with Donald Trump. North Korea is talking about abandoning their nuclear weapons program. There's a huge connection here. Because, well, the big connection is China. China is worried. See, we've just put pressure on China, and now they're not going to worry about North Korea now, because they could end up with a civil war on their hands. Let me explain. It used to be kind of all-out communist, but now they've put different parts of capitalism into their society, so they can't really, there's no going back at this point. They can't go back into communism when their people have had a taste of what life could be like. So now, they have to worry about their own interests. If we start pulling away from China, they could be facing a civil war. They're very reliant upon the United States. I've heard it said for at least 10 years, this whole thing about how their economy, or our economies are intertwined, but they are extremely reliant upon the United States. So we're in an amazing negotiating position, and Donald Trump is doing what is necessary, and at the same time, is pulling North Korea back in a way that hasn't been done. I mean, throughout the entire Obama era, the 8-year segment, they were setting off missiles and threatening the United States, talking about attacking us first. I remember it in the news. And then Donald Trump took over, and now he's managing to change things by putting pressure on China in a way that we haven't been able to do in the past. Or at least haven't been willing to do, I should say. Alright, well, that's all I have to say for now. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe. And, of course, share it with your friends. Thank you.
Health-wise.